Morning. I'd like to call the July 20th meeting of the Environmental Resource Committee to order. We would stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started, I would like to say hello on YouTube to Don Eggert, who's home recovering from medical problems, and possibly to Mila Millman, who is in Europe on State Department business. Welcome to the meeting. I was told just before the meeting that the council has approved remote participation for Don and for Mila for future ERC meetings. So until Don recovers from his medical issues and Mila returns, if it's possible for them, we can set it up for them to participate remotely. So we'll be in contact with you to talk about that further. First item of business is the amendment and approval of the draft agenda. Are there any amendments that anyone has?
I think we were going to add an item 6C.
Yes.
For the Homegrown Parks Green Initiative.
Yes, we will. Do we also want to add 6D for Keep America Beautiful grants?
I haven't done any work with it yet.
Can we put that, can we kind of do that under, if we do sort of green initiatives and Homegrown Parks under that, and then we can add that in? Or put it on for future? At least we can talk about it and see if the council, if we all kind of think that's something to do.
All right, so we'll put that at 6D, but we'll really do C and D together.
Okay, that's a good idea.
The only other item for amendment, I had included the meeting date for upcoming meetings for the ERC and the town council. The August town council meeting is the 10th of August, not the 1st. And in September, the council meeting is on the 20th of September, not the 6th. So those are the only two other changes that I could see. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have no public participation today, so there's no comments. The next item are the ERC meeting minutes from May 18th and June 15th. Steve, we really didn't talk about this when you became secretary, but the practice has been for the meeting minutes to get submitted to Chad and then sent to the other committee members with the packet. Okay. So there's really no prior review and comments to it. So okay. Everything happens at the meeting. I have marked up my copies of the two meeting minutes with changes that I think need to be made.
So I know I used to just submit them to Chad and then he would distribute it in the packet.
Right. And that's what he did.
Yeah, okay.
And I took what was in the packet and I marked it up.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any changes to give to Steve for the minutes?
The only thing I saw was we were changing. He had Don will call me EMC. Or if that's major.
Yeah, if you give me the changes, I'll just,
Yeah,
I can just type
Do
them
that,
in.
right.
I made that.
I save all the documents. Okay.
So if you could clean that up and send it to Chad, then
Sure.
we will have that as part of the next meeting to finalize those minutes.
Okay.
Okay? Is that all right, Chad?
So we're gonna move these minutes to the fall meeting to approve.
For approval, yes.
All right, cool.
Okay.
You'll need a motion for that.
Do I have a motion to move the final review and approval of May 18th and June 15th meeting minutes to our, what is that, August meeting? Is
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we do that.
there a second?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Under old business, the first item is the update on the RCCP Phase 3. Chad, do you want to give us that, or should I? Or
Yeah, I can give it. So we had just gotten the news. We are in stage 3 of the RCC Resiliency Grant Program, and we have just been awarded the grant for phase 3. So that will cover all of our engineering costs for the project, one or two of the projects.
for one project at 40th and North Shore Drive, 40th Street.
The Saffel Baffles.
No,
No, which one is it?
it's the Shoreline Protection.
So for the shoreline protection, we were awarded the grant, so it'll cover our engineering cost. Stage 4 will be implementing that project, so we'll look at obtaining a grant. We haven't even got much information on stage 4. We're waiting on that to come out, but we would be eligible to apply for stage 4 grant funding, and ultimately that will go through the council to see how much of a match will be there and stuff like that. So we're kind of knowing we got awarded phase 3. That's to be worked out between the town, the engineering, and the grant program. And moving forward, we'll look to apply for stage 4 and go from there.
What happens with the Saffel Baffle portion then? Is that something that can be resubmitted somewhere down the line, or town has
John,
to
you
do
wanna
that
take
now?
that one?
The town would have to take on the Saffel Baffle project on their own. And with respect to that, I believe we should contact Elliot Swain and find out what help we might get from the program he's affiliated with, because I think that falls squarely into some of the things that he's trying to do to clean up the pollution going into the marshes and intercoastal waterway.
What I saw on that CCAP program was that the town would complete it, and then the state or Elliot's program would refund the money. Is that how you read it? Is that how you saw it? Maybe.
I'm not sure how the cash flow goes on that,
Okay.
but we would get their approval on doing something before it was done. It wouldn't be 100% reimbursement, but it is there is an opportunity for the town to do those and not have to pay 100% of the cost of it. That in that regard, can somebody from the committee contact Elliot directly?
I can reach out to Elliot. Elliot sent me an email about a week ago, and I responded back to him yesterday. So I'll try to get up with Elliot and see what that looks like and go from there.
Yeah, I would suggest that we give him the application the application packet for the DCM that we give that to him for the Southfield baffles, because that's very complete. And he'd be able to look at that and tell us what his program can possibly do for us. So you'll take care of that, right?
Correct.
All right.
Thank you.
But we did get the grant. I think it's almost $47,000 to do that engineering work, and that's going to be a big benefit to the people out on the west end of the island. Are there any other questions about that? Yes, Steve.
Well, I just would wonder if you'd tell me who Elliot Swain is and maybe help Mila too. I'm not familiar with that name.
Okay, Elliot Swain is with Brunswick County, and he runs the, I forget exactly the name of his group, but he's doing projects to clean up the pollution in the Calabash River and the Intercoastal Waterway. And he has, he works with the state agencies as well as the county. And Elliot was a participant in the rain garden workshop that was done here, and
Also Earth Day, Arbor Day.
and he came as an exhibitor to Earth Day, Arbor Day, and he has followed up. He followed up with me personally on a project to possibly replace my impervious driveway with a pervious driveway. And
Steve, to kind of help you out, I looked it up real quick. Elliot Swain is the director of the Brunswick County Soil and Water Conservation.
yes.
Thank you.
Do we ever test the water quality like in intercoastal and the ocean?
We don't, but it is tested.
The only reason I say I know we don't, but
No,
the only thing I noticed, like since they did some of the dredging, the water like last year was like deep brown. That might be because of rain, but now it's a little greener, lighter. And I know I just received a letter, they're gonna dredge and put waste on some of the land next year.
yeah, and the spoil.
I'm just wondering, from a water quality, like you mentioned, water flowing into or storm water going in with pollution into the intercoastal, I think it's real important for us to manage that down the road, because we don't want to end up like Cape Canaveral where everything's dead in the water from red tide. I don't know if we would have red tide here, but all the pollutants have gone in the water and basically have these, red tide algae blooms have accelerated and killed everything in the water. There's no grass or anything in the water.
Steve, didn't Lake Erie catch on fire or a river or something?
Yeah,
up there?
Cuyahoga River.
Other than put
No,
We want to
I
avoid
just,
pollution.
it's just interesting because like,
those waters are monitored. They're regularly tested. Elliot, a big part of the work Elliot is doing is to work on projects that will remove pollution going into the intercoastal as well as the Calabash River.
yeah,
And because both of those bodies of water are technically considered to be polluted by the EPA, mostly for solids in the water.
yeah.
And where you live, I wouldn't be surprised that you see some change in the water from the dredging.
Yeah, I see the water color instead of like this deep green is a lighter green, but I guess they're going to
Is that good or not?
I think it's good because you can see.
You can see the
You
bottom.
can see. Well, I don't see the bottom, but Ocean Isle is clear. I was down by the Charlotte River; it was really super clear. But no, I hate to see us ruin the water.
No, we're trying to clean it up.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a state and federal area of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next item, next order of business is Sunset at Sunset. We had a subcommittee for Sunset at Sunset with Candace and Rich and I. We had a subcommittee meeting,
Okay.
and I created this memo with the minutes of our meeting. The ERC would like to have its own exhibit booth at Sunset. We've been offered or told that we have space within the town.
Correct.
Will we be able to get our own area?
As far as I know, you would still be in the booth with the town.
So what does that mean? We get one table, we get part of a table?
It would be kind of the same setup as it was last year.
So we'll need to meet. and
That's
revisit
not going
what
to
we
give
can do.
us very much room to do anything. We had space for one person to stand behind a table.
Really not space to display anything either.
If that's the only exhibit area we have, then we have to really change our plans.
That's what that's coming from Lisa.
All right, I'd suggest that the committee meet. Well, how do the other committee members feel?
Well, since I was there with you last year, I have a pretty good idea if that's what we're doing, how much space we're going to have. And it's literally about this much space on the table. So the things that I think we need to revisit, I think the subcommittee should meet again pretty quickly so we can revisit this and have something ready for the town council meeting if we need to take them something about what we're doing. And basically what we can do is you can't have more than one volunteer there at a time because there's no space. And we could hand out brochures and that's about it.
How much space is behind the table?
Well, Rich, we'll have space for one person
Yeah.
to stand behind the table. We'll probably get about that much room.
Yeah.
One thing that the subcommittee talked about and agreed upon was that we wouldn't get into big handouts of planting materials or grocery bags or stuff like that. We wanted the exhibit to be more educational, to tell the town or the public about the Environmental Resource Committee and hand out some educational materials on some of the programs that we're working with. I guess that could still be done in a smaller area.
Yeah, we just have to decide what materials we want to present and make sure we have time to get things printed if we need to, like for the Homegrown Parks, if we want to begin talking about that.
Would we be able to hang a banner behind us that identifies the ERC as a...
We can find out. The other thing that we need to discuss is right now we have no money. That will go to, I will present that to council. I'll present that to council August the 10th.
If we're not handing anything out except materials, we probably don't need a big budget.
But
Just a
this
little bit
is
of print.
also going to cover Earth Day Arbor Day as well. So that's what,
But that doesn't have to be at the August meeting.
yeah, so I will be asking for the money for
the year.
Sunset, for the year for Sunset at Sunset and Earth Day Arbor Day combined. There was about $600 or $700 left over
Yeah.
from Earth Day Arbor Day that we were going to use to buy reusable bags and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Right now, because of the June to July starts a new budget year, the money doesn't roll over. So we're trying to correct that. And get the money approved so we have it all year.
Okay.
So
But just in terms of Sunset at Sunset, I think as John said when we discussed this, we decided we weren't going to do big handouts where we had to order a lot of stuff, primarily informational materials. So it'll mainly be printing.
that's fine. I mean, if there's not any money used, it'll just be used and set aside for Earth Day, Arbor Day.
Yeah. But it
Um,
might take some pressure off you to have to get that done for August if we need more time to look at what the budget should be
I mean,
for the following year.
have to get with Lisa, but I'm pretty sure we were prepared to take it in August. But
Okay.
that will be something we need to talk about. The standard is probably going to be 2,500. That's what we did last time.
And it should be enough.
If it needs to be increased, or if it's wanted, well, if it's wanted to be increased, we need to submit something to me so I can present it to council to justify increasing it at all.
So when you go to the meeting in August, it will be to get money for, essentially to get money for Arbor Day this year in 2023 because we're too late to have that as a line item in
correct,
this year's budget.
correct.
So it would be to do this for 2023 and then on an ongoing basis, it will be the two together so they fall in the same budget.
Yeah, I mean
year.
that's what we're doing now. We're going to
Yeah.
put them both together.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And we're basically just doing a requisition to the budget, budget requisition to add that as a line item essentially, and then formally just put it in as a line item in the planning staff's budget from year to year.
I guess my thought is that we had $2,500 for Earth Day, Arbor Day. I would like us to be able to get a sign, some kind of a banner for the ERC, and that's probably $200 or $300.
Mhm.
The one,
And then a couple $100 for publication of literature.
Mhm.
So if we could get another $500 for informational materials for Sunset at Sunset.
yeah, I mean, if you, yeah, I just need to be able to submit something to council to justify.
So the extra $700 or whatever, is that like, when does that go away?
It's already gone away.
Oh, okay. So what do they do? Just use it for something else?
So
or-
what we were going to do was we were going to just replenish the reusable grocery bags to give away for Sunset at Sunset.
Okay.
The brochure's already done. It's going to be reprint. It just, I don't know how many copies you had left over, but just printing those again. That's something we can do in house. The
I don't-
banner.
Do you have those? I don't
the-
know who has whatever brochures were left.
The banner from the Earth Day Arbor Day event that we can use from year to year is already created. We just would need to do the paying whatever the fee would be to
Change the date.
change the date, overlap the date. And I think there was the idea of a banner to kind of go on the back like ERC, and there's 3 or 4 bullet points for that as well. So
But a smaller banner, table size, 6-foot
correct.
banner.
Yeah, not as big as the one we did.
No,
before.
not the one you hang up
Yeah.
at the park.
One
Right.
across the road.
Yeah, and I know, I think Planning Board's been looking at standards for events at the park. Is that through them, or who's doing that?
That's me.
That's
We're
you.
taking it through the planning board. Well, it's not just events in the park anymore. It is events.
Town events.
Yes.
So will that change any of the things as far as signage goes that we can do for
No.
these events?
Signage will stay the same.
How far ahead of, say, Arbor Day, Earth Day, Arbor Day, can that sign go up?
3 weeks.
The
3
banner,
weeks.
3
yeah,
weeks.
Rich. Yeah, 3 weeks.
I mean, next year, what we probably should have like, we can put a ad in Facebook.
Yeah, we'll have more time.
You can
to
have,
get
you
things
can
done.
put all that stuff way in advance so people
Yeah.
know it's happening.
But I know this year, because you guys did a great job of compressing the timetable, but the banner wasn't up really long before.
Right.
And I just know so many people, and that really is where they get their information about what's coming, is they see that banner, and then they mark it on their
And
calendar.
this year will be on a Saturday, right? So there'll be
Yeah.
a lot more
Yeah, we can have
people
more traffic.
probably. The only thing too, as far as literature, a couple of those agencies we work with provided a ton of free literature on and I have some of it's really good, great stuff on rain gardens and
Yeah, we've got a lot of that left over. I have it in my garage.
yeah, that's good
And
stuff.
we did have extra copies of this, but the QR code in this needs to be changed.
Okay. Yeah, that's a simple fix.
Right. Um, to go, what level of detail do we need for the council
For budget.
for a budget? We have
Rich, I
2,500.
think you broke it down line item by line item last time. That would need to be updated and submitted to me
Yeah, I think we can.
by next Friday.
Sure.
Good thing
I
John
think
asked.
that, well, hold on. Let's see.
Budget.
Well,
Let me just, 29th, the 5th. Yeah, so if you can get, I tell you what, August the 1st or 2nd, if you could get it to me by then, that would be cutoff date. Because planning board packets will go out next Friday for the August 4th
okay, now
meeting.
that was detailed in your request to council the last time. So that information should already be.
It is, but if that's just for the 2,500, if it wants to be increased, then it really needs to be tweaked just a little bit.
Okay. So we just have to add to that
Yeah, which
an
is
allowance,
basically what you're doing.
educational materials
and
for,
justifying, yes,
a banner and educational materials, $500.
correct.
And
Does that need to be backed up by quotes, or does it just need to be
I mean,
estimated?
I think you and Rich attended the meeting earlier this year and spoke. So some type of representation, probably at the council meeting, wouldn't be the worst idea to
I
speak
think
on
you
behalf
did
of
the
the.
presentation.
I did the presentation, and it'll still be my agenda item to present, but I think it helped
Okay.
with
To have backup.
to have just the support there.
Do you want us at the August meeting?
That'd be great.
Okay,
What's the date of that again? 10th.
August 6th,
10th.
10th?
10th. And it is a 9 o'clock meeting here, a.m.
The morning meeting?
Correct.
So we got the budget, and
At
then
the
we've
meeting,
got
you
to
guys can
read.
come and talk about the bridge.
So do some texting or something to
What, so late?
add some things.
Yeah.
Because instead of one tree, I think we need groves, right? 2 sets of 3 trees for our next planting next year.
For Earth Day over there. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Do
I'm
you-
wondering.
Do you guys have questions or thoughts based on
No,
what?
I guess we spent $1,800 last year if we had 700 left over. So I guess maybe next year we spend it all so we don't lose it.
Oh.
And the other thing I would say too is I know that the town was developing a website, redeveloping a website. So it'd be good to have a content that we apply for this Arbor Day event on their website as well as other things we're doing. So we can email or have when we hand out a brochure, we can have the website with the ERC piece and people can just click on it and go right to all the information if they're interested.
Right, I haven't heard anything about the status of the website upgrade. Has there been any?
Steve,
I haven't. Lisa's been out the past
that.
2 days. So she's back today. Let me see if I can get an update from her.
She said she wasn't going to stay long because she's not feeling.
So
All right, so the subcommittee will re-meet and talk about what
What we can do.
we can do
can't do.
with the space available to us.
Okay.
It's not.
Well, the good news is we have some space that we know will be available, and we can be represented.
And the other good news is that at the meeting in last week, the council did approve that Earth Day Arbor Day be an annual yearly event. So
That's great.
yeah.
So for next year, Sunset at Sunset, how do we ensure that we get our 1 or 2 tables?
I'll work on that.
Is that Karen Joseph? Do you want
Yeah.
us?
Mhm.
No,
It's the town's event. Karen just puts it on or
Oh,
helps
okay.
put it on.
okay.
So maybe put
Yeah.
that in the budget, in the budget, the fee for that and the fee for the tables and things. Can that go in our budget
Well,
request?
I'm
Got the
confused.
Peter and Peter. Peter involved. Yes, it's
I'm
not.
confused because we got the application to become an exhibitor.
Right.
I filled it out. I sent it to the town, sent it to Chad. They looked at it and said, no, you're going to be part of the town's exhibit. So next year we would ask again for our own,
Mhm.
either our own table within the town space or our own tent.
The problem.
Now,
with
I know
the
this
problem
year-
with the town space. I mean, there's not room in what they put aside for the town. So we could be right next to them, or the town would have to enlarge their space. But you and I were there. I think there was only one. Was there only one table in there, as I recall?
No, there were a couple.
Were there?
Yeah.
Well,
It's
maybe
hard
we can
to
get there earlier and spread out.
because we were all under the same cover with the police department.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the police department was next to us. They had their own. They had
they had their own
tent.
table.
Yeah, and they had their own tent.
Okay.
And then the fire department was at a different spot with a fire truck.
I think we need to recognize this year too that the space is going to be at a premium because
Oh yeah.
it's being moved from uptown down to the
Mhm.
park area. Earth Day, Arbor Day, 2023 planning. The budget's the big item for that. I guess one question I had as an event next year, what will be our responsibilities for parking control and traffic control and things like that?
We will have to come up with a parking plan. Diagonal head-in parking in right-of-ways. You can use the parking at the park. If we use parking from any surrounding businesses, we would potentially, what I'm proposing is getting permission from those property owners to use their parking. Head-in parking in the right-of-way or diagonal parking in the right-of-ways is now allowed, so that will be able to count toward it. So depending on how many booths we have to have a space and a half per every booth that is in that event. So if we had
We had
Steve
20
Wood-
exhibits, we need to have 30 parking places.
Correct. So we'll just need to come up with a parking.
We park
Plan.
under the bridge.
I think we're working on that. Yeah, the town is working on some things to provide additional parking down and around that area without taking up business owner parking. Like I said, I'm proposing that if you're going to use business owner parking, such as the 2 shopping and restaurant places around there, then you've got to get written permission and a letter signed by the property owner. So. But like I said, you've got parking there at the park. No, we took up a couple spaces for the BMC electric car.
Right.
So we'll just have to look at it and come up with a traffic and parking plan and go from there.
All right.
What was
Always
parking?
something.
Sorry. What was parking like the last time?
I didn't think it was that bad.
I didn't think it was
Okay.
really an issue.
Assuming
But-
though it's going to grow, it will.
We're going to
become
double it this year.
Yeah.
Good problem to have. Maybe we can promote bikes and golf carts,
Yes.
walking.
Still have to have parking for them.
Yeah, it'll be for cars. You won't have to really account for it. You just need X amount of parking spaces. Right now, our UDO does not do a great job of recognizing anything but a motor vehicle.
There's no bike parking rack at the park, is there? I don't think there's anything
There are
else.
bike racks.
There's not.
No.
Are there at the park?
Two, at least two,
Yeah.
maybe three.
Really? Where are they?
One's up by the front where the diagonal parking is. The other one's back by the restrooms. There may be one
I'll
or
have to
maybe
look.
two
I'll
back.
have to look when I go.
I rode my
really-
bike over there a couple weeks ago and I was looking
Uh-huh.
for them. So.
Okay, Earth Day, Arbor Day, we have a budget issue and we have to come up with a parking plan. And a parking plan will be determined by the number of exhibitors that we plan to get. We got to think that through.
Is there like another area where they can park cars that they can shuttle people in, or I mean, because sounds like
On golf carts. So
it just sounds, yeah. Because I was over at the market the other day, and all those lots were closed off.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we in the past I've had Boy Scouts leaders
Right.
run their shuttle, right? But they had their own gators, basically, is what they were using. So there may be some volunteer opportunities to do that, but as you know, Sea Trail, they have a large parking lot there with maybe 20 or 30 cars at the office.
Over by the planetarium, there's I don't know who owns all that.
Yeah, it's probably I'd say that's too far from now. But
Yeah. Okay.
But
And
you're
again, if
talking
it-
about the Riptide office.
yes.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't happen 2023, maybe by 2024 if we need it. When we continue to grow, we can look into that. But yeah, I think we should have volunteers, or we can get a cadre of golf cart owners. Not sure what the liability would be if a kid falls off or something. That's always a consideration. Needs to be.
Well,
Good
I
idea, shuttle.
suspect there's going to be a lot of development in this area of parking around the park over,
Sunset.
particularly what'll come out of Sunset at Sunset.
Yeah.
That we'll be able to learn from and figure out how to do it for our event.
Mhm.
Cross the bridge and then think about it.
We can have a contract for e-bikes like they have in the city. Like they have all these e-bikes in Greensboro.
Yeah.
They rent them out to people. They travel all over the place with the e-bikes.
Is there anything,
Sounds absurd, but I mean, I'm
I
just
think
saying.
half my neighbors have e-bikes already.
they do that around Richmond too. Is there anything else for Earth Day, Arbor Day, or Sunset at Sunset?
Not right now.
Okay.
We'll work on it later. Would be nice to get some. Steve and I struggled a bit last year. It would be nice to get whatever kind of administrative support, as far as keeping track of confirmations. I mean, it wasn't a big job, but it was still a few hours a week, several hours a week. I don't know if I may be asking a lot. We want to be self-sufficient, completely self-sufficient. Some of those things we may need assistance with, but we can develop something.
I think we're on our own.
Thinks okay. Yeah, it would be minor, but okay.
I think we're on our own.
Now that we have 3 people on a committee.
It's our event.
Should be easier this coming year than last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not we're reinventing the wheel. Not
Yeah, I mean, the timeline for that, I mean, as soon as Sunset at Sunset's in early October, so Earth Day, Arbor Day will be on our agenda from October, November, December, January,
6 months.
February, and March. So we'll have almost 5 to 6 months to start planning this, get things ordered, and kind of go from there.
That's true. Yeah. A little more time,
Yeah.
a lot more time.
okay. Moving on. ERC Subcommittee Structuring. um, Chad, at the last meeting, we were all tasked to provide information to you. I don't know how much information you received about the areas that we should focus on, what the priorities were, and the areas of interest to be in on a subcommittee.
Yeah, not a lot.
I have to admit, I didn't send you my thoughts. I've been very vocal about that. So I wanted to get ideas from other people on the committee as to what their thoughts were. I talked to Steve about it, and being brand new to the committee and to what we're doing, he's using this as an educational experience. So he didn't provide input. What? Maybe we'll start with you, Steve.
I think you pick the topics that you want the subcommittees to do. And
Well,
then
I wanted you to either confirm that or add to it.
repeat what you want me to do again. Say that. I'm sorry.
What are the areas that we wanted to focus on? We've been recycling, we've been climate change, and we're into nature-based activities with trees and rain gardens and things like that. Do we stay focused in that area, or do we add to that?
I mean, you've got some time here. This is something that can be, if you want to, again, move this to August, Earth Day Arbor Day, I think, really kind of showed as we broke up into kind of teams of two to what we really focused on presenting to and brought to Earth Day Arbor Day as a whole. One of the subcommittees that I think, in my opinion, that needs to be formed and at least 3 people put on it. And as of right now is the one that you need is kind of an event subcommittee, which will cover your Earth Day Arbor Day events and your Sunset at Sunset. It kind of goes on what we need to get, what we need to order, those type things. I know meeting with Rich and getting a lot of stuff ordered and some time in my office, being able to work through that. We just being able to do it, as it came kind of called upon, was easy, because if you wait on doing stuff just at this meeting, you really limit yourself, especially trying to get stuff done in between weeks and stuff like that. I know recycling was one that was thrown out there. I mean, the 2 subcommittees that we've had in the past have been recycling, and that was worked with Don and Candace, and then the other one was more event, and I think that was set out to be Steve Levine and Rich. In Steve's absence, John Farrell's, stepped in for him, and then once we got to Earth Day Arbor Day, it really became Steve, Rich, and John that really moved the planning part of that forward. Again, you can have more than one, more than 2. I mean, you've got 7. I know we're limited right now with what's here today, with circumstances that we can't control with the other 2 members. If you're not prepared, that's fine. But I would say one of them needs to be probably 2 to 3 members that are prepared to help plan, and kind of like we did with Earth Day Arbor Day for Sunset at Sunset, to make sure we don't limit ourselves.
I have a suggestion
So-
that if Sunset at Sunset could be covered by the recycling committee, or the 3R committee,
Mhm.
and then the Earth Day, Arbor Day covered by the Green Committee. So they would be under those two umbrellas.
That's another great way to
As
do it.
opposed,
Yeah.
and then once we need a third event or a fourth event from our committee, go on from there.
I
So
like the idea of separating those two things just because it's
It's a lot.
yeah, it's a lot, and it's a lot to put on
And
one
they are 6 months apart, which is
committee.
great, right?
That
So we
that
get
helps, and
keep
there's
ERC.
things in common. So if if you can plan on, gee, we're going to need this many bags in general, and we only have to order once. That's great, but I think that's a lot to add. I know how much you guys had to do last year for
Right,
Earth Day,
yeah.
Arbor Day. I hate to see you add sunset at sunset, especially when that's still kind of an unknown for us how much impact we can have and what control we have since it's not our event.
The other thing that I think throwing into that suggestion would be with Don's current condition of not being able to be here in his timetable for return, Candace can't do it by herself.
Recycling.
The recycling committee taking on Sunset at Sunset or Earth Day, Arbor Day.
I think
Well,
we
we
discussed
have-
last month.
We have Sunset at Sunset subcommittee,
Okay.
so I think we're okay for this year, and we just
Okay.
would need to look at what we do next year.
Okay.
Right. And
Right.
Don
So
is, I talked to Don yesterday, even though he's not able to attend the meetings, he's still very interested to be able to participate in things
Yeah.
remotely. And particularly, he has a passion about recycling, as we all know. So he would like to be part of that going forward.
And I think we also need to think about, especially as we look at Earth Day, Arbor Day, Sunset at Sunset, those three members need to also, you're representing the board, but if somebody not on that subcommittee has an idea or throws something in there, make sure that their voice is heard on that. Because you can have up to three. The reason why we're committed, doing these subcommittees and even moving our board to 7 is so we could meet as more than 2 people and not have a quorum.
Right.
So
I look at it anyway. I'm kind of trying to break this down, so I'm brainstorming here. So you got 3 different things. You got existing programs we're trying to manage, and then environmental impacts we're trying to manage, and then events we're trying to manage. So if you break it into 3 different categories, and I say it like, for example, recycling is a program. So maybe we have 2 people focused on different programs that are out there that we have to comply with or things we do. Environmental challenges would be, climate change, environmental change, CAMA challenges, deploying rain gardens, so on and so forth. And then events would be like Sunset at Sunset and then the Arbor Day. And I think, in my opinion, you have 2 people focus on that, but then you have to come back together as a team to kind of approve or disapprove what they come up with.
Well, it's when I think about recycling, one of the things we did is keep it as an agenda item when we had anything that was
Right.
salient.
Right.
And certainly any of the subcommittees could present, because I do think it's important. The whole committee needs to be aware of what's going on, not just the subcommittee. And I know for
Yes.
for
Yes.
Sunset at
Yeah.
Sunset, John's been pretty insistent. If Rich and I tend to forget, we're like, let's go ahead and do this. There's John, like.
But you
wait
get
a
have
minute.
like one person become like a subject matter expert on one thing,
Yeah.
and then they report back to everybody, and
Right.
rather than all of us trying to be subject matter experts on all the topics.
I think when we were looking at Sunset at Sunset and trying to use that as an opportunity to educate the town about, the people about what ERC is doing, there were kind of 3 areas that we looked at, and they sort of match up with what you're talking about. The recycling, although we said we should probably rename that, not just we could call it recycling if people can identify that, but really to have a focus also on the reuse and reduce components, not just recycling, so we don't get in a mess in the first place. Kind of like what we would, for lack of a better word, calling it green initiatives, which would cover like the Homegrown Parks and Keep America Beautiful and the things that Earth Day and Arbor Day are sort of in that area, but events that maybe the green people could feed into. And then resilience, which is the rain gardens and protecting the coast. And we had talked about, could we do a cleanup day and things like that? That might fall in there. And then events, if we did that separately, I mean, they would just be different subcommittees in there that fit under those general, I guess what I would call kind of our priorities. Because they're basically educational events, and that's one of our key things.
Yeah, I mean,
And one of the things that I had looked at, and I don't know if we want to do it as a subcommittee, but how do we start building partnerships, either with other groups in town, like Sunset Vision, so that we can get some help on some of the things we may be doing, or maybe supply them some backup, and even with other agencies. So we had a pretty good working relationship with Mickey when she was up at the county waste, but she's moved, and we'll have to find out who's taking that over and
Right.
reestablish. So I don't know if that should be another area.
I have an idea, and kind of go with me on this one. Right now, we have one subcommittee, and that is the help planning for Sunset at Sunset. I think one of the things we're struggling with right now is what subcommittees are we going to have? Is there going to be 2 or 3 or 4? And I'm going to, if the chairman lets me, I'm going to task him with something, because I think this might be the easiest way to do it. Yeah, John, I think you reaching out to each member individually and talking with them on ideas of what they would have and what subcommittees would look like.
Okay.
And then you and I can sit down and analyze this. And I think that way everybody's input.
Oh,
And I think my experience with working with you has been, you spearhead this pretty good.
I'm willing to do that. I think this discussion this morning is good because
Sure.
it's educational,
Yes.
not just for Steve, but for all of us to hear what everybody's thinking about.
Yes.
And there's a lot of good ideas that are coming up.
And I think that's where you come involved. I think if you were to talk to each individual, I think they would be
Okay.
able to voice their concern, have a good conversation with you about it. And then ultimately, because I don't want to get in a situation where we have 5 subcommittees thrown out there, 5 ideas, and then all of a sudden we pick 3 and 2 very important ones are dropped by the wayside or something like that. So talking to each individual and figuring out what they how they would like to see, and then we can work on
Okay.
taking it to really 1 or 2 or 3 and combining them and structuring them like that to where we can bring something back to this board, say, hey, these are the 3 that we've come up with, and this is what each subcommittee is going to be working on and discussing. And this is how we made sure that everybody's ideas got fit into some category to be able to work on something we're passionate about and kind of go from there.
So some of those committees would only need 3 months out of the year, 4 months out of the year.
Correct.
So to float from one committee to the other, right? So to accept 2 committee assignments or
Okay. Part of a subcommittee is the activity of an event, but a big part of each subcommittee's got to be education, which is an ongoing, recurring thing. It's not just a once a year thing. We like Steve has brought up, when the town gets its new website, we need to build content into the website, and we need to come up with ways of getting that information out into the public.
Well, and maybe at that time, that's when you have a subcommittee that's sort of looking at what should the website contain. And their job isn't infinite. They're not going to be working forever. We build that website and then we look at maintaining. But it's
Well,
going to be a lot
that's,
of work, kind of like Earth Day, Arbor Day, a lot of work for part of the year. But then you can still work on other things. And it fits in, if I think about like the green initiatives that you're talking about, those kind of fit in there. So
I think, well, my big concern is, yeah, if we have more than 3 subcommittees, how much time are you going to have to commit to being on multiple subcommittees? Because once you get started on something like this, it develops its own momentum.
yeah.
I also think you should be focused. I mean, there's 20 things you could talk about. You got to pick the most important ones and work on those first, and then.
I agree. And I think that's what he's saying is, maybe John can help us work on what should the priorities be, and then how do we structure the subcommittees to do that.
And I think once a subcommittee goes through an activity and they learn some of the lessons that they need to learn, those lessons get shared with the other people when it's presented to the whole committee. So we don't need to have so the lessons learned and the shared information just helps everything grow. It helps everything get better. Rather than have an event subcommittee and a communication subcommittee, let's just stay focused on the topics, and as we learn about how to do those things, we share it with each other, and then we'll get there. But Chad, I'll take up your idea and talk to each individual.
I mean, as long as y'all think that's a good idea, I mean, I can.
I think it's a good idea. I just think, we just pick 2 or 3 things to work on and then add, you have others. You may have 10 things we want to work on and we pick 3 and we go after those 3 and then be good at those 3, whatever they are, recycling, resiliency, or whatever it is, and then keep it simple. And then when we figure that out, we can add more later. Because if we try to do like 10 things at once, we might go insane trying to do that.
Steve Hines, is this going to help you understand and
Sure. Yeah. No,
figure out where you want to participate?
exactly.
Okay.
One question that I do have, I understand that the need for subcommittees, and limiting those subcommittees, but I don't see that there's any reason why subcommittees couldn't task other ERC members with certain focus for, to assist that subcommittee. Just wouldn't attend the subcommittee meetings. Are we like running afoul of the public meetings law doing something like that, or?
As long as you don't have a quorum.
As long as they're not part of the subcommittee meeting.
Right.
Yeah, if we, like Steve said, or Steve Levine said, if we have a quote unquote subject matter expert, they can work with all the subcommittees individually. They just can't be at their meetings. But that's a resource the subcommittee can use to support what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea that each one of us become like an expert on one topic. And you
Okay.
can become an expert by
So
watching.
before I talk to you, figure out what your subject matter expertise is, and we'll sign you.
Pool. No,
We'll
I'm
sign you
joking.
up.
No, but I think if you do that, and because like there's a lot of things I don't know, but I can become an expert by watching YouTube videos and reading the internet and reading the news on it, then going, reading about it, and then I become knowledgeable about it, and then I can share it with somebody else.
We did discuss at the Sunset Subcommittee that if we are an information group, that everyone who volunteers needs to know something about every one of the projects that we have. So as a subcommittee, you would have your one-page, bullet points. So if I'm there and I know very little about recycling, I would tell whoever's asking questions, answer that. But we should all have that knowledge, that basic knowledge, provided by the subcommittees in charge of those by the time it's sunset.
Yeah.
So, I mean, which gives us 2 months to catch up as much as we know about the three topics, 4 topics we want to cover at the sunset. So, yeah, subject matter expert, it's a great idea, but we also need to, I think most of us know, that's why we're on this committee, most of us know enough about the issues that we can talk about it, but there are specifics that the town has, or new information that's out, or connections that we can make, or neighbors can make. So we need to be updated on all of those things.
You realize the definition of an expert is someone that only knows more than the person they're talking to.
That's right.
So we,
Land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
like I thought we picked recycling. You guys did a lot of research on recycling. I mean, if I sit here and study something, I could probably learn a lot more. And like I
Right.
said, and
I think that's the commitment to the committee that we've all made, that we need to be fluent in what's discussed at the board
well,
committee
and
meeting.
there's more information available than you could ever understand.
right.
The big thing is to provide links to where people can go to find things out.
And I think in a meeting like this, maybe each subcommittee has 5 minutes or something to report updates, and I've learned this, this, and this, and this. So, provide it back to us to talk about.
Or each subcommittee can provide a report that outlines that information.
Right.
I mean, it's so that there's a record of it going forward. But okay, we'll follow this up. I'll talk to each individual, we'll brainstorm. We'll think about subject matter expertise, and then we'll talk about this again in August. Is that what you were thinking, Jen? Okay. New business. On June 28th, I attended a lecture over in Ocean Isle Beach on sea level rise and high tide flooding. A gentleman named Roger Shue, who is a lecturer at UNCW, a geologist, spoke about this under a program that the museum runs. It was a very good lecture. Most of the information that he shared about sea level rise was from the NOAA report that was issued earlier this year on sea level rise. So that's kind of old information, even though it's only a few months old. And he talked about high tide flooding, king tides, and things like that. Probably the most significant thing I came away from, I came back with after his study, was the impact of sea level rise and high tide flooding on Tubbs Inlet. And I know with the Resiliency Community Action Team, we really didn't identify Tubbs Inlet as an area of risk and vulnerability for the town. But it is an area of risk. And because with high tides and sea level rise and storm surge, any water that floods the coast is going to naturally go right through Tubbs Inlet in behind Sunset Beach Island and then behind Ocean Isle Beach Island. It's always been that way and it always will be that way.
John, at that meeting, did the dredging project come up at all? Did he think that would have much impact, like either
That wasn't, no, that wasn't,
ameliorating it or exacerbating it? Flooding?
that wasn't discussed.
Just interesting to think that, I mean, it's got to have an impact one way or the other.
Well, actually, after the meeting, I went back through the history, the information that's in the historical records for dredging. I believe a lot of those issues were raised by the public, were addressed by the Corps of Engineers. They were evaluated, and it's all wrapped into the final approvals that were done. Will it be impactful? Probably. Is there any way you can avoid it? No.
Are they going to dredge Tubbs Inlet?
No.
Okay.
Tubbs Inlet cannot be dredged.
Okay.
The inlet hazard area, and when you look at the maps of the dredging that's been done in South Jenks Creek, it comes right up to the border on the inlet hazard area, and it can't go any further east.
Okay.
That's all controlled by nature. Am I correct on that, Chad?
I think if Ocean Isle Beach and Sunset Beach came up with a way to do it together, Tubbs Inlet could be dredged, but it'd have to be a joint effort by Ocean Isle and Sunset. But normally when you dredge, sand is going to replenish itself somewhere. And it's going to draw from somewhere. We'll just have to see what that looks like over the next few years as the dredging project moves forward through this fall and into the winter and go from there.
Roger did talk about the Ocean Isle Beach terminal groin and the beach renourishment that were done there. And the terminal groin is going to slow down the erosion on Ocean Isle Beach, but it's not going to stop it. And periodically they're going to have to renourish that beach, and they'll take out the sand that's in the Shallotte Inlet that builds up over time. Like Chad said, sand's going to go where it goes.
Usually down.
The erosion that comes off of that is one source of sand that goes into Tubbs Inlet that causes the shoaling that exists there now and will build up in the future. How that will change because of the terminal groin, we don't know.
Well,
and people are going to be
like
watching.
the man said, over the next 5 years, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
With other variables.
The
So many of them.
Yeah, one bigger.
I just remembered something we should have put on the agenda. When Steve attended a summit yesterday.
So did Chad. Chad was there with us.
Is there anything that should be shared with us?
Probably not all that relevant to what we're discussing now, but basically it was environmental organizations pulling together to put this summit on, just so we got an idea of the state of the science and also what some of the impacts are.
This is all with respect to offshore wind power.
wind, right?
Right.
Offshore
Wind power.
Wind power. There seemed to be a particular concern for an area in what they're calling the Central Atlantic Development Area, which is north of Cape Hatteras and off of Kitty Hawk area. and even north of that. But one particular area has been identified as potential impacts to petrels, and there's several species that are maybe of concern, and also commercial fishermen. It's apparently a pretty productive commercial fishing area. One of the commercial fishermen was there, said that the confluence of the Labrador Current and the Gulf Stream make that a really productive area for, especially, he's a pelagic longliner and they fish for tunas. And so that's where they're getting a lot of big eye tuna and yellowfin tuna from that area. And if that area is developed, they don't know what the impacts are going to be, but they do know that they won't be able to fish in that area. So that's one of the takeaways. That it is difficult for fishermen to fish in a field of wind turbines. But another takeaway I had was that one of the biggest concern is impacts to northern right whales. And they spent a lot of time discussing. There was a section on marine mammals, and we talked about northern right whales and very little about
Everything else.
sea turtles. They talked about nothing else, and then there was some questions about sea turtles, and even though it was a topic of discussion, it was really focused heavily on the right whales. One of the things that I was happy to see is that the science is really coming along. There's some things that I was involved in when I was working for New York that were funded by New York, and I see some of the products, a lot of the publications that have come out with a lot of information that's been collected. 2020, 2021, 2022. There's a lot of good information that's been provided on the status of the resources that are out there, and some monitoring that's been going on. So that's, for me, it was a great thing, but I don't know how relevant it is to this committee at this point. In the future, I think that there will be some wind development that's within sight of Sunset Beach, and I don't know if that's something we need to be concerned about. Oh, it's all going to be offshore. It's going to be outside of 3 miles, well beyond any jurisdiction that we have.
I guess my thought is we just need to learn as much as we can about this and what's going on. When you look at the political climate across the world, pretty clear that solar power, wind power is inevitable.
Well, one of the things I found out was that there's a project, WOW, it's just kind of a strange thing, but it's Wildlife and Offshore Wind, and it's really headquartered out of Duke University. So there's a lot of work that is going on in North Carolina on offshore wind. People from Duke and really a lot of different educational institutions and government agencies. It's a tremendous amount of work going on. There's a real investment in this, and also one of the things I learned was that the U.S. Navy is one of the biggest funders of the research, and because they have a huge investment in the ocean, obviously submarines, surface ships, and also aviation, and building wind turbines that stick up 1,000 feet in the air can impact all those things.
1,000 feet. Wow.
Yeah, if you've ever seen them on land.
I've seen them in California.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are minuscule compared to what they're talking about for offshore.
So they're going to run cables underground on the ocean floor back to land?
That's one of the impacts that they're concerned about, is running cables. The cables probably would be required to be buried. When they get a permit, they would have to bury them. That would mitigate some of the electromagnetic field concerns for the people have, but also just to get the cable, off the seafloor and buried well below any biotic environment. So the problem is going to be, as you know, in North Carolina, there's a lot of natural rocky habitat. There's the offshore area is littered with these ledges and reefs. And when you bury a cable, you draw a straight line on a chart, but that doesn't mean you're not going to run over, important habitat. So there's concerns about that, and there's concerns about where those cables hit the shore too, and what because you have to bring the cables ashore. You have to have transformers at sea. You have to have power stations on land. So it's an entire infrastructure that has to be developed. But the plan is to have basically a system that runs up and down the Atlantic coast that connects all of these.
Now, what was being considered there is wind turbines that would be built off the ocean floor, not floating in deep water, correct?
Well, in deep water areas, you do have to have floating turbines.
Well, you're not going to bury cables in deep water.
Right.
You're going to have it suspended.
Somehow it has to be.
And that's where the Navy has to be concerned.
And as we would have concerns about things like right whales.
Right.
Well, what's the time frame on this? Like,
well, you're talking about probably decades to build it out. It's
10 to 20 years.
okay.
Okay.
Steve.
Again, I would
update.
suggest
Thank you.
Whenever you see an article about wind power, that you at least skim over it and try to figure out what it's all about.
The council does have a member that is tasked with this. I guess Mike Hargraves
Right.
is.
Mike
So
Hargraves and John Corbett are part of that. They attended the first one in Southport along with me. I attended it in the morning. They showed up, I think, in the afternoon. And that was really to look at aesthetics, really what these things would look like from shore. And really the visibility of his Bald Head to Holden Beach, Bald Head being the closest to it, which I think is 17 miles, where it's a little bit more further away. Once you get into Castle Beach, Oak Island, and Holden. I did ask the question yesterday, is there any, there's a lot of support for this as you turn up Bald Head into Carolina Beach and Wrightsville Beach and Figure 8. There's a lot of want for this energy. I don't think it's really wanted in the Brunswick County beaches, I think, and I think that's where our interest comes into play, is just being there to gather information and supporting the other beaches. But I think there could be some okay with this, but I think the right questions are being asked, and I think that was the big thing that came out yesterday. It was good to see the research. I had to leave early, but it was good to see the research that was being done. This was not a summit to want this, like, hey, we're going to do this. This is how it's going to impact you. It was not one-sided here or the other. It was really to present the scientific facts of what we're finding here, the concerns we have if this comes, and monitoring the species that could be affected by this as well. So yeah, I thought overall it was really good.
We're much more aware of environmental impacts than we were 150 years ago when the oil industry was doing the exact same, right? They've got their big towers out there and the pipelines underneath. So fortunately, yeah, win or lose, or yeah, if it comes or not, at least we're aware of the environment.
I think the other general consensus is that if you have wind energy and you have offshore drilling, I think people will take the wind energy if you had to choose one of the two. So,
And which we will.
Yeah, but the devil you know is better than the one you don't know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't know a lot about either one of them right now, and I think the questions are being asked, as Steve said, and especially with the U.S. Navy backing a lot of the funding for this. I think people are trying to cross their T's and dot their I's as much as they possibly can. It's, you know, had a conversation with Steve yesterday. The location of a couple is questionable, and it's not so much the energy; it's just why would you put it there? But those are beyond our control. We just scratch our head when we see it, type thing.
Right. It's just
Was-
right now. I'm sorry, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe are already 10 years, 12 years into wind power.
Yes.
I'm sure there's a lot to learn. Every ocean floor is different, but you would think the foundation.
Yeah. And like Steve,
Foundation said.
yeah, and like Steve said, the epicenter for in our area for this, within the Mid-Atlantic, is the Outer Banks, with this relation to how far it juts out and this relationship to the Gulf Stream, how close it is. So even them, I think they're a few years ahead of us in the planning of it and all that. So
Was there any discussion of a follow-up meeting, another summit?
Well, there was a discussion of the proceedings from this one being ready, I think, in about a week or so. And since we registered, we should be getting email sent to us to notify us when that type of information is available. And also we'll be plugged in, I guess, for anything in the future.
Okay,
But I didn't hear about any upcoming summits or meetings.
good. Well, thank you for attending and you for sharing the information.
absolutely.
Item B is the Storm Surge Flood Awareness Campaign. This is an idea that I saw written up in an article where some of the local towns are doing things to increase the awareness in the public of storm surge and flooding by maybe erecting a pole by the gazebo down at the beach that has markings for different levels of storm surge so that people would be able to relate to, okay, if we get a hurricane, we're going to get 6 feet of storm surge at high tide. How high could the water be?
Hopefully they won't stay to find out and evacuate.
Well, it's going to be whether you're there or not.
Yeah,
But I don't know if it was an idea. I thought I'd bring it up and see if other people thought something like this might be good to do, or maybe even Chad go back to the staff and see if they're what they would think is the benefit of an awareness program about flooding and sea level rise and storm surge by putting up some visual information that people can see about.
Maybe even a mobile. So if we put it in the park during park events or during concerts at the concert.
No, I would put up a pole,
Well, that's what I
Permanent,
mean. Yeah,
a
the
permanent one, but
permanent pole.
But it would also be nice to have something mobile that as part of educational things, but you'd have to figure out how do you calibrate that.
you could put different storms and
6
where
feet.
they were.
Yeah.
Here's where
It's
Hazel.
interesting because we're seeing the opposite. I keep seeing the things from Lake Mead, which is drying up, and
Yeah.
they had one that was really striking. There's this big pole there, and it says this was lake level in 2002, not that long ago, and it's like way over your head. It's just incredible when you look at the loss, and I think it'd be surprising for us. Way over your head, water's coming.
Well, you can go up to the aquarium in Fort Fisher,
Mhm.
and you see a totem pole there with different levels of
Yeah.
storm surge, and up at the top of that is Hurricane Hugo.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, John. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. The directly ties to your flood insurance because I have VE flood zone in my house. There's a tidal surge. I don't know. My house has been there a long time, but yeah, I think a lot of people, like I've been involved in some real estate. There's a lot of misconceptions on flooding, and there's like multiple flood zones, and depending on which flood zone you're in, I think if you see the pole, that's one thing, but then if there's a certain type of hurricane coming, people on the inland can decide whether or not they want to evacuate based on if it's a 1 through 5 hurricane and how high their flood zone is.
I think what John was looking at too was not what's happened in the past,
Right.
but what's predicted if there's a 10% increase, a 25% increase in the number and the height.
Yeah.
So all of that. It's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do this, but I guess this is an idea that ought to be further developed by a Resilience Subcommittee, possibly. I wanted to share the idea and let people think about it, and we'll bring it up again later. And is there any other discussion for that? Next item would be Homegrown Parks. Rich, I'll give you the floor on this one. You can explain the idea and where we want to go with it.
So it's a national program, 3 or 4 years old, begun by Dr. Talamy of Rhode Island, I think. And I did research yesterday, and several major cities and smaller towns in North Carolina are involved already. But it is planting native species, maybe replacing what you have, but planting native species in your own backyard, front yard, in your own yard, and the wildlife comes back. If you have it, then the neighbors have it, other people in the neighborhood have it, and the town and the county have it, then you will attract those beneficial native wildlife, many that are near extinction. It's an easy, we can't change what happens at the world summits, but we have control, 100% control of what's other than the HOAs, but they should. Anyway, we have 99% control of what we put into our yards. So we were discussing using that as the umbrella for the Green Committee for native planting projects throughout Sunset Beach. Not just neighborhoods, which would be a great place to start, but also for the town, schools, any government office, any businesses to do their homegrown national park. I can discuss the BEMC sponsorship, and it would be for the homegrown parks. We would ask for $2,500, which is their grant maximum. $2,500, and then we would get interested Sunset Beach property owners. I think that's where we went. Sunset Beach property owners to register at Sunset, hopefully. Register there to let us know they are interested. And then we would do the outreach, contact each of those people. And with the sponsorship from BEMC, hopefully, we would provide knowledge, information, and the plants. The plants would be the hardest thing. I know a couple members on this board have looked for native plants in the region, and they're just not out there. Everyone wants palm trees and pindos. So if we could work with the local, the county Master Gardener program, the county, the state Native Plant Committee, a Native Plant Society, the National Wildlife, North Carolina Wildlife Federation, several other groups to provide those plants at cost, or we grow our own, however we can make it grow, to provide native plantings throughout the town. And then hopefully from there, the next town over, next town up will join in that program. That may be more than you wanted, but that's there it is.
Okay, there is a brochure on homegrown parks. And I think this was distributed, this was attached to a communication to everybody. If necessary, we should probably redistribute this. But this gives an overview of the idea of a homegrown national park program. And Rich came up with this idea, talked with Candace and I about it as part of the Sunset at Sunset, and the idea of going to BEMC for a community grant to support this program came up, and you can go online and get an application worksheet. Rich has drafted up an application worksheet. I guess, Chad, we have no authority or power to do anything. So I don't assume we can do that. We could submit a grant request to BEMC, but we could.
It would have to go to
We would request that the town get this grant. And I also don't know if the town went ahead and requested this grant, if this money could be credited to the ERC or if it would go into general funds, or I don't know how this.
I'll have to ask. I'll have to ask Tara and Lisa are here, so I'll have to ask them. But also, I think you would have to seek permission from council to be able to apply.
Okay, this is the first draft of a grant request that Rich has filled out. So we will give that to you.
I guess, do we need to get like consensus from the group? Or
Okay.
like a motion that we should do this, or what?
Well, let me say one more thing before. So this is not the only grant we will apply for. We will apply, I think we will apply for the Keep Brunswick County Beautiful grant, which is part of Keep America Beautiful, a 50-year-old program that the county is using, Brunswick County is part of. So if we ask council for this grant, can we get approval at the same time for Keep America Beautiful grant?
Yeah. So what you would need to do is we would need to present both to council to seek permission, and then also provide to them is there a match? Is it 100% just awarded money and that type of thing?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I need more research on the Keep America Beautiful.
For this, Rich, could we attach, because you're asking, could that just go to general funds? I mean, the grant goes for a specific project, so whether it went into general funds, the town would still have to spend it on what they gave the grant for. And I'm wondering if we should attach for council, just here's the BEMC grant program. So when we get to that place.
Good idea. And also, I don't know if anyone has any photos from our Earth Day event. There was someone
That's
there.
a great question.
I mean, you have to do that, right? You have to have photos of every event that you do. You put it in a paper, you put it on social media. It has to happen. So I think maybe we need someone on this, or a spouse or a volunteer.
An expert. We
volunteer.
need an expert on photography.
Well, photography.
Well, you can use your iPhone.
And the press. And the press also. We really need a press outreach because if we do our 7 gardens at our house, well, we need to tell 7 other people, and on and on and on. It needs to be exponential. So
Does the town have somebody that does that? It's like a publicity person.
Brunswick Beacon had a photographer at Birthday Arbor Day, but the pictures were never published.
No, they did publish them, because I remember saying, the Master Gardeners were really happy because they were doing those seed bombs, and there was a picture of them working with those girls, and there was a picture of the scout troop that was there.
yeah,
So there were
kids always.
pictures, but we didn't, and they were in the paper. But
I've looked for them. I didn't see them.
Yeah, I went online to look for them. I didn't see.
Okay.
them,
you
but-
didn't see, I saw them. Wow.
Okay.
Maybe I get a different version of the paper. I don't know.
Maybe.
You're special.
I am.
Are there questions or discussion about this idea of of a
I
homegrown
got
park
pictures of it.
program and about BEMC grant application.
I would support it.
All
And
right, do I have a motion then that we recommend that, what do we recommend?
That we proceed with the Homegrown Parks
We
education
proceed,
Second.
process
Yes.
and grant application.
I think that
that we proceed with a homegrown park program
Mhm.
and that we go through staff to try to apply for a BEMC grant to pay for this.
And keep America beautiful.
BEMC.
What is the deadline on these?
It begins December 1st.
Okay.
December through March, I think, for this one.
Okay. All right.
But Keep America Beautiful, I've lost track of where that was. I don't know if it starts in September. Maybe I can look into it. But soon.
Okay,
That-
Anyway,
so that'd be-
I would make that motion, just the way you said it.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we can ask Chad then to run this grant application through the gauntlet and see what we,
Rich, if you'll, is it finished?
So I had no idea what the other information was. And there is a little pride of authorship, but if Lisa or whoever wants to change the entire thing,
Let's
It has
just
to
hold
be.
on to it. We'll set up a meeting with you, me, and Lisa. It'll probably be give it a time because I'm getting ready to go into hibernation in my office for the
Oh,
next
okay.
couple weeks because I've got a lot of stuff I've got to get done. So
all right. All right. So you want me to, or you want to set up a meeting and tell me?
yeah,
when
I'll set up
you're
a meeting.
available? And probably one of our committee.
Yep.
Yep. Green committee people.
let me take a photocopy.
With your camera?
Yeah.
21st century.
Okay, that's all the agenda items I have.
So I did have, since it came up in conversation, I didn't. So maybe the new business also. John had talked about inviting maybe BEMC, someone from BEMC about what their energy programs will be or what their outlook looks like in the next 5 or 10 years. But then we also talked about Elliott Swain. This is all go back to the knowledge, that we should all have some knowledge. If we had invited Mr. Nance from BEMC, Elliott Swain from Brunswick County, and then maybe Keep America Beautiful or one of the other programs, or even Sunset Vision, if we wanted to open invitations for a 10-minute presentation from any of those people. Just something to consider for next meeting.
I definitely think that we should stay on top of what Brunswick County is doing to replace Mickey. And when a replacement is identified, that we invite them to meet with us and we try to continue the efforts that
That
we,
sounds to me like a great Don Eggert
yeah,
task. I'll talk to him about that as part of the recycling subcommittee.
right.
And we would want that before,
Give him something good to
February.
work on.
and we would want that by early, I would think, before our,
Yeah.
again, we need that knowledge for Earth Day anyway, if they have someone.
Well, and she also did the Brunswick County Keep America Beautiful, or Keep Brunswick County Beautiful. She was in charge of that too, I believe. So,
Right.
Right.
And I don't know if the next person will be.
Well, she may
Well, it's-
continue to do that.
she could in what she's doing. So.
Yeah, that's not,
Oh, okay.
that's not a government activity.
Mickey, right.
But
Mickey.
these
would-
are phone work that I think that Don might like to have something to get his mind,
Yeah.
Okay.
keep his hand in on.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Did you want me to do an outreach for Mickey or Mr. Nance or Elliot?
Chad's going to be talking.
Or do you want to consider that?
What
Because you're going to
What-
be talking about the Sapple Baffle things anyway.
What interest do others have to having maybe Elliot Swain or somebody from BEMC come in and talk to us about their programs and what we might be able to
I think
collaborate
it's,
on.
yeah, I think it's a great idea.
That's a good idea.
Plus, I think with all the growth in the county and city and
Yeah.
town, how are they going to deal with power going forward? And water.
Oh, right.
Okay, so you and I'll work out the details on it.
Okay.
I will share with the committee that on a personal project, I've looked into putting solar power on my house, rooftop solar power. And there's a lot of advertisements about people that'll do that for you. And I've worked with a couple of them. And one of them is a company called Pink Energy. And I went through their website, figured it all out, how many panels I would have to have and how much power it would make. And they've looked at my utility bills and they came back to me and said, we're sorry, but you don't have enough electrical use that this is cost effective. I
Isn't that
think
what
you
they
went
told
through
you
the
to
same
do?
thing. So what that tells me is that even though there's been a sharp decline in the cost of doing solar energy, it hasn't gone far enough that it would really be cost effective for most homes in our community.
Unless there was a way to sell that energy back, the excess energy that you're not using.
It's not a
And we don't
question of
have-
selling back the excess energy because you only put enough
Creating the
power up there for what you use.
You could put more power up there if you had an opportunity to sell
If you
it
had a
back.
big enough roof,
Yeah,
but you need a
Sell it
really
to your
big
neighbors.
roof.
but boy, we get so much sun here that.
But anyway, yeah, I think
But it wasn't cost effective. That's interesting.
well, it's not cost effective. Now I'm still pushing them, and they're coming out to my home on Saturday to look at this. But I think getting educated about this from BEMC and seeing if there's something we can do together might be useful.
And then our personal homes may not be large enough, but a building like this, a school building, a municipal building, a grocery store, can you imagine?
Well, there's other ways to do this.
Right.
Okay. Is there anything else anyone wants
that's
to
all
bring
I
up? All right. So then we need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion, we adjourn today's
Is
meeting.
there a second?
I
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, folks.